What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to the show, Under Center with Abelson, presented by the Real Spiel Podcast. We are back. Week 9 preview is here. Another great weekend of college football is upon us. Not the best. Okay, there's never any bad weekends of college football. Never. There's no such thing. Literally no such thing. But obviously, there are some better weekends than the others. Not a lot of high end, top marquee matchups, but this is what I always say. It's always those weeks where there's not a lot of games, a lot of like big games where something crazy happens. Something crazy happens every weekend, but it's always that weekend where it's like, oh, I could skip a game this weekend. Oh, this game, there's not a lot going on. That's always when something crazy happens. Be warned. Be warned. We have a lot of ranked versus unranked matchups. We have a lot of big spreads, and those are the matchups in games where you look back and something crazy happened. So we are going to get into some of these previews. We're going to talk about a bunch of these games. But before we do, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Been seeing a little traction on this page. Been getting a little traction. The views have been going up a little bit. So make sure to follow. Make sure to subscribe, like, repost, share with a friend. As always, we are here a couple times a week talking all things college football. And with that being said, let's get into the preview. The first game we will touch on is Ole Miss versus Oklahoma. This is one of the few ranked versus ranked matchups this weekend. This feels almost like a playoff play-in game. It feels like the winner of this game is going to set themselves up. I kind of take that back. It feels like a play-in game for Ole Miss. If Ole Miss wins this game, they pretty much all but lock in a playoff spot, in my opinion. If you go look at the rest of their schedule, it gets pretty easy from here. They play, let's go look at it real quick. Ole Miss, they play Oklahoma, obviously, this weekend. Then they play South Carolina, who's reeling. They play Citadel, and then they play Florida, and then Mississippi State. So it really feels like if Ole Miss can win this game, they all but have a playoff spot locked in, because unless some crazy stuff happens, I just don't see them losing to South Carolina. Obviously, the Citadel. I don't see them losing to Florida. That Mississippi State game could be a little tricky. It is a rivalry game, and it's a rivalry game, last game of the season, and Mississippi State is much better than in previous years, so that could be a tricky game, but I wouldn't be too worried about that game if you're Ole Miss. And if you're Oklahoma, obviously the schedule gets brutal. They still have to play Tennessee. They still have to play. Who else do they play? I can't remember all these schedules off the top of my head. They play Tennessee. They play Alabama. They play Missouri still, I think. I know they play Tennessee, Alabama, LSU, and Missouri. So it doesn't get really easier from here. So you really don't want to fumble this opportunity if you are Oklahoma with a game at home. I think, man, Oklahoma, John Mateer had a great bounce back game. That game against Texas, he rushed back from the hand injury. He wasn't throwing the ball well. His timing wasn't there. All the throws were a little behind or ahead or behind, up top, below the receivers, just not on time. He looked much improved against South Carolina. And South Carolina, I know they've had their struggles this year, but that's still a good defense. Obviously, they have Dylan Stewart. They have a pretty good defensive line. And it was on the road at South Carolina, and to dominate the way they did, 26-7 or whatever it was. Didn't light up the scoreboard, but played a lot better. He played a more complete game than we've kind of seen, than we saw from him that previous game against Texas. I'm looking at his stats from South Carolina. Yeah, again, he didn't light up the scoreboard. He threw for 150 yards and one touchdown. But he only ran for 14. But his throws, he was looking a lot better and a lot more comfortable on his throws. But the story for them in the last game was their defense, and that I think continues to be the story. They sacked South Carolina 6 times. This is a group Oklahoma, who continues to lead the country in stats. If I'm not in sacks, if I'm not mistaken, if they're not number one, then they're definitely top five, top two, top three. Chambliss, Ole Miss coming off a tough loss against Georgia. That felt like a game that they should have had up until the fourth quarter, and they just kind of hit a wall. Georgia started turning up the defensive pressure on them. Chambliss started, for the first time really since he's been starting. We saw him not make really any mistakes, but he wasn't really just as sharp as he has been since he's been starting. Ole Miss was able to get pressure on him, speed him up. He was making some errant throws. So I think if you're Oklahoma, I think you definitely take a page out of that defensive playbook from Georgia in the second half. And that does give me some concern if I'm Ole Miss. That does give me some concern that because Georgia's defense this year has not been what we're used to. It hasn't been that, shutout defense, that Ohio State type defense that Ohio State has this year, where you're just limiting teams to field goals and like one touchdown a game. If you're Oklahoma, I would be taking notes on that fourth quarter because this Oklahoma defense is, it's still one of the best defenses in the country. I know they didn't play well against Texas, but you're allowed to have one bad game, and I think it's going to be very, very tough. This is another road environment for Chambliss, but unlike Georgia, this is one where you're going to have where you're going up against a defensive line who can get to you. That's kind of the one area Georgia's defense has been kind of struggling in is actually, getting pressure and sacks on the quarterback. Oklahoma, they just live for sacks. They sacked Jackson Arnold 10 times. They got 6 sacks against Lenore Seller against South Carolina. And man, it's going to be pretty shaky, I think, if you're Ole Miss. I think if you're Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss, not to bring up Louisville, I'm a Cars fan obviously, but I think you take a play out of Jeff Brom's playbook in terms of how Miller Moss orchestrated the offense. You're going up against the great defensive line. The most important thing, especially when you have, I'm not gonna say Ole Miss's offensive line is shaky, but the one thing you want to do when you're going up against a great defensive line is you want to get the ball out quick. So if I was Chambliss and Lane Kiffin, I would be that would be the game plan. Do not hold on to the ball because Chambliss is a good runner, but I would only be running if it's out of necessity and not, if it's out of necessity. If I'm Chambliss and Lane Kiffin, I am orchestrating plays, shallow drags, just to get the ball out quick into your playmaker's hands, just so they can, do something with it. So I wouldn't be holding on to the ball because that's the problem we've kind of seen, like especially with Jackson Arnold. When Oklahoma played Jackson Arnold, he just held onto the ball, and when you let this defense get some time to pass rush, they will get after you. But again, with Ole Miss, they do have a pretty solid offensive line. I think they've only given up like 11, 12 sacks all year. I think they're like top, something in the country or the SEC in, sacks allowed. So the offensive line has been holding up. It's been holding up. And again, you have a quarterback with Chambliss who he can use his legs. He can move his feet. So I think Ole Miss has the recipe to neutralize Oklahoma's defensive line, but it's just this is just a tough position. I don't know if that's going to happen. Outside of the defense, because I don't think this is a game that Oklahoma can win strictly with their defense. I think Ole Miss is too good of a team and too good of an offense specifically for this to just be a game that Oklahoma, wins like 20-17 or 17-14. I have so much respect for that defense, but I don't know if that's going to be one of those games. So I do think Oklahoma, John Mateer, he's going to have to, he's had a couple warm-up games. Again, he didn't really play well against Texas. He didn't light you up against South Carolina and just kind of did the things he had to do. But I will say one of the things we haven't really been seeing since in the 2 games he's been back is the run game from John Mateer. I don't know if that's because he doesn't want to put himself in a situation to hurt that ham, by getting tackled. I don't know if he's being hesitant to run, but that was one of the the driving factors of Oklahoma's offensive success before he got hurt was the John Mateer run game. because Oklahoma is still having issues running the ball. Let me see. Let's see how many rushing yards they had against them. They're still having issues running the ball. They ran for, they ran for 171 yards against South Carolina. So maybe they found some momentum. Maybe they found something with the running game to carry on into this game. But what makes John Mateer good is the fact that he is a dual threat, quarterback. He's a quarterback who can hurt you with his legs, design runs, and he's a quarterback who can light you up with his arm. And I think that quarterback is going to have to show up. But with that being said, I think he will show up. I think he's had a couple tune-up games to kind of get warm and loose. And I think being at home makes a big difference. Brent Venables going up against a young quarterback. That's something else that I didn't really touch on. He's excellent when it comes to your young quarterbacks. I think his record against young. I don't know what this age requirement for you to be young as a quarterback in college is, but his record against like young freshmen or something like that is like 25 and like 7 against young quarterbacks. So I think the defense of Oklahoma is going to give Ole Miss a problem. I think Chambliss, he might, throw a turnover or two, especially on the road. I think it's going to light the crowd up. The energy is going to continue to feed their defense, and I think John Mateer does play much better. I think he has a great bounce back game. He's using his legs. He's using his arms. And I am going to take Oklahoma -4.5. Next up, we got Missouri versus Vanderbilt college game day. I think this is college game day's first time going to Vanderbilt since 2008, 2007. I know there's been a hot debate about college game day and how they go to a bunch of basically SEC games. I don't know because I don't like the SEC. I don't like how they are the best conference, but I just don't like the way they're trying to go about this new era of college football. But with that being said, they are by far the best conference, and the best games in college football are typically SEC against SEC games. So I'm not mad about, especially Vanderbilt, because Vanderbilt is a place they haven't gone to in almost 20 years. So they just so happen to be good this year, and they just so happen to be in the SEC. So I'm not mad that they're going to Vanderbilt. Another reason is because a lot of the places that they would be going to, they don't go to because of, losses. Like, they would have gone to Florida State versus Miami, but then Florida State lost the week before. I felt like Memphis versus FSU had a great chance of happening this week, but then Memphis lost to UAB. So when it's already a stretch to go to some of these other places that they typically wouldn't go to over an SEC matchup, a ranked SEC matchup, when that team loses, like you really lose your chance to make that happen. So I'm not mad about it. Would I like them maybe to go to at least maybe once or twice a year to go to an environment or a school that they haven't gone to in a while? Yeah, it's not the SEC, the Big Ten. Yeah, I would, but at the end of the day, I like to see big games as well, so I don't really have a problem with them, going to the biggest game of the weekend. But with that being said, Vanderbilt and Missouri, I like to call this the battle, the game of underrated teams. I've been talking about both of these teams all year, how I think they've both been, extremely underrated. I think they're starting to get a little respect. Vandy's in the top 10. I think Missouri is around 11, 12-ish range. But both these teams, man, I'm telling you, they're underrated, but one of them has to lose. One of them has to drop in the rankings. That's just the way it is. As far as the game and some keys to this game, both of these teams, I think these are both teams who like to slow the pace of the game down, especially Vanderbilt. It feels like Vanderbilt likes to win by controlling the clock, limiting your possessions, because even if you don't play a perfect game, if you just have more of time of possession than the other team, you don't have to be perfect. And third downs and time of possessions are where Vandy loves to live. They love to have a high percentage conversion rate on third downs, and then they love to control the ball in possessions. And if you can keep the other team off the field, then they're staying cold, then their defense is getting tired, and you're burning the clock. And I think that's the way Vandy likes to play because they are not a run and gun type of team. They're not going to kill you going vertically every single play. Diego Pavia is not going to take the top off. They're slow. They're methodical. He gets some. They keep the chains moving. Get some yards on the ground. Get some yards through the air. They'll get a chunk play, touchdown. Same with Missouri. Missouri is another team. They like to run the ball. Ahmad Hardy, one of the best running backs in the country. Although I will say, Ahmad Hardy, this is something I wanted to touch on. He has, you know, over the last couple games, he's looked a little off. This is a guy who had 100 or more yards rushing in every single game up until the Alabama game. And the last two games, Alabama and then their game against Auburn, he's barely combined for over 100 yards. I think he had like 50 and then like 58 in the other game. And I think that kind of goes hand in hand with. I don't think it's a coincidence that the two worst rushing games that Ahmad Hardy has played were the two games that Missouri seemed to have struggled the most. Obviously they struggled a little bit offensively to kind of get things going against Alabama. I know that game was a 3 possession game. They had a chance to win, but there was a couple turnovers, a couple fumbles. They couldn't really run the ball. It felt like points were hard to come by for them, but they made do with what they had and they were able to. But then Auburn last week, again, that game went into overtime. It was kind of a slow, sluggish game. The offense just didn't look like it was clicking all the way. So I think Bo Perbula is a good quarterback, but I think Mizzou's system is, built off the run. Whether it's the quarterback run or obviously the running back run, when they can run the ball, I really, truly think that opens things up a lot for the passing game. So I think that's going to be one of the keys for Missouri as they look to, kind of get back into the swing of things is Ahmad Hardy, man. He has to be able to run the ball. I think, get him 20, 25 touches, let him try and go for over 100 yards because I think that can open up the passing game. But Vandy has a stellar defense, stellar run defense. I think they're pretty up there in, run defense. That's a tough unit to run on. But I think if there is anybody who can run on them, it is Missouri. It is Ahmad Hardy and Bo Perbula. If you're Missouri's defense, man, you got to stop Diego Pavia. That's who is the head of the snake. He is the engine that makes them run. Diego Pavia, I think he's thrown for 1,500 yards, and he leads the team in rushing yards. He leads the team in rushing yards as a quarterback. So Mizzou, I think if you want to limit Vandy, if you want to stop them, if you want to win, you got to cut the head off the snake because this guy is such an integral part of what they do offensively, whether it's through the run game or through the passing game. Because this is not a guy who, he's not going to really go out there and throw for 300 yards, 350 yards, and throw for 4 or 5 touchdowns. But his impact goes far beyond what he's doing through the air, man, because this is a guy who gets those tough physical yards. He keeps the chains moving. He keeps them, on third and manageables. And I think that's why that they have such a successful third down conversion rate is because this is a guy who's continuously, doing what he needs to do to get his team into third and manageable. So they're not having to convert from 3rd and 10 and 3rd and 12s and 3rd and 9s and 3rd and 7s. It's more 3rd and 3s and 3rd and 5s. So that can keep their offense on the field and those drives moving and the chains moving. Man, this is a tough game for me to call. I have been going back and forth with this pick, and if I'm being completely honest, I still don't know who I want on this one. Sorry, I'm watching the Knicks and Cavs game right now. Looks like the Knicks are about to take it. 30 seconds left. Knicks took it. But anyways, man, honestly, I just said that just to kind of stall and buy a little more time to think about this pick. Oh, Vandy's sitting at -2.5. I don't think you guys. This might be the hardest pick that I've had to make all year, if I'm being honest, because I love both of these teams. I think both of these teams are, like I said, underrated. They both play hard, good football. I'm going to go with my gut. I'm going to go with my gut. I think Missouri has a bounce back game. I know. I think the hype is going to start because now Vandy's kind of starting to get the hype. Over the last few weeks, I can't even really call Vandy underrated anymore because over the last few weeks they have been, but then like now I think, especially after the LSU win, I think people are starting to see how kind of legit Vandy is. They might, as Nick Saban says, they might be eating that rat poison. They might be, posting those news clippings, and this looks like a spot where that Cinderella, not that Cinderella run, but the hype and the vibes, the good vibes from Vandy might fall, man. I am going to take Missouri plus 2.5 on this one. I just think Ahmad Hardy's going to have a great bounce back game. I think Bo Pabula is going to play extremely well. And I just think Missouri does get this one done. So we are going to take Missouri plus 2.5. I'm not confident in it. I think Vandy I think Vandy has a very, very, very good chance of winning, but I'm going to take Missouri plus 2.5. Next up, we got Texas A&M versus LSU. Death Valley at night. Ooh, that's a scary thing to say, man. I know it's a scary thing to say. Death Valley at night. Anyways, Texas A&M versus LSU. Texas A&M going on the road again, playing in Death Valley at night. Um, Man, I mean, I was gonna say, will the real LSU please stand up? But then as I was about to say that, I think I was gonna follow up and be like, this is the real LSU. Like we keep waiting for the offense to take that next step. We keep waiting for Garrett Nussmeier to take that next step. But I just this is it. When somebody shows you who you are, believe them. And I think that LSU is just an average offensive team, an average to bad offensive team with a great defense. And when you have a good defense and an average, offense, you can find ways to win. And that's in their wins they have found ways to win. Against Florida, they threw 5 picks and didn't get any points off them, and they found a way to win. But when you play against great teams, that's going to be tough. I mean, can LSU play the best offensive game of the year? I mean, I've been waiting on it. They finally scored more than 20 points against a power four component or opponent against Vanderbilt. They were able to run the ball a little bit against Vanderbilt. Garrett Nussmeier looked, a lot better against Vanderbilt offensively, but it still wasn't 100% there. It still wasn't all there. It still wasn't clicking on all cylinders. LSU's left tackle's hurt now. He got hurt in the Vandy game, so that only compounds the issue, and that makes it even tougher, I think, for Vanderbilt, because that's definitely going to be something to keep an eye on. I mean, I'm trying to find like the positives. Defense, I guess. I guess LSU's defense, man. They do still have a good defense. It did kind of get exposed against Vanderbilt. I think Texas A&M can take a play off of Vandy's page, and it kind of just looked like Vandy went out there and kind of punched him in the mouth. They were playing tough, physical, and Vandy, man, against or LSU against the defense. I think the vulnerable part of the defense for LSU is the quarterback run game, because that we've seen now against two running quarterbacks LSU has had trouble with. Chambliss ran for, I think, 70, 75 yards when Ole Miss beat LSU. Diego Pavia ran for 86 yards last weekend when Vandy beat LSU. I think that's the hole in their defense, because it has been a pretty stellar defense all year. That's kind of where they've hung their hat. The offense hasn't really contributed much. They've done enough at times, and the defense has kind of carried. But the run game of the quarterback, I think, is where you can exploit that defense, and I think Texas A&M has arguably the best runner out of all the other two quarterbacks I just listed, Pavia and Chambliss. Marcel Reed, he is, as dual threat as it gets. I've been super impressed with how his passing and throwing has kind of taken that next step from last year, but he is still a guy who they are going to call direct design runs. When things kind of break in the pocket, he can extend those plays. He can take off. So I really think that he is going to give LSU some trouble in the run department. I will say, though, I don't know this. I don't like to, sometimes stats like this are meaningless, but this is one of those situations where it feels like it has some value. I mean, LSU is 20-1 at night games under Brian Kelly. 21 at night games. Some of those games have been against unranked teams. Some of those games have been against bad teams. Some of those games have been against great teams. I'm just putting it out there. I am just putting it out there. 21 at night in the Brian Kelly era. Um, I just will say I just can't, dude. I can't. I've been trying to think of scenarios and how I can see LSU winning. Okay, I take that back. I can see them winning this game. I think them being at home, I think they could put together an offensive game. Their defense could show up, especially in that home environment, get the crowd fired up. They could contain Marcel Reed. They they could get Marcel Reed to throw a couple turnovers. Maybe they can get a fumble, something to turn the game around. So I can definitely see a way that they can win this game, especially with Texas A&M. I think this is their second straight road game. Who'd they play last week? I am. It's almost 10 o'clock at night, and it's been a long day, so my brain is not all the way there. They played Arkansas. That's right. They played Arkansas, which that was a tough game for them. That wasn't a cupcake. That was that. I mean, they only won by 3. I know. I think Arkansas scored pretty late to make it a closer game, but Arkansas was hanging in there. This is their second straight SEC road game. Whew. And then they play Missouri next week. They got 3 straight road games. That's tough. But either way, I do see a way. You're playing your second game story SEC road game. I do see a scenario where LSU can win, but we're here making picks, to put money on and to betting the spread, and I can't justify putting money on LSU, man. I thought a couple weeks ago they were overrated, and then they go out and kind of play, and then they lose to Mississippi or Ole Miss, and then they lose to Vandy. Their backs are up against the wall because they lose this game. I think they're done. But Texas A&M is a good team, man. Texas A&M, their 7-0 is, I think, a legit 7-0. I don't think they're frauds. Their defense has been playing well. Marcel Reed has taken the next step. I think they have arguably a top 4-5 wide receiver group wide receiver duo with Craver and Concepcion. I think is Moss hurt? I think Le'Veon Moss is hurt, but they still have a good collection of running backs, and their defense is playing well. And I just don't trust LSU's offense to kind of flip things around. We're 9 weeks in, and we're still having questions about, and we're still debating about LSU's terrible offense. So I don't think that's something that they're just going to snap their fingers and fix. I think this is kind of what they are. I think, Garrett Nussmeier, maybe that injury is a little more serious than what we think it is. But I do like Texas A&M minus 2.5. We are taking that and the spread, and they're going to get a big time road win. Next up, we are going to talk about South Florida versus Memphis. Hell of a Group of 5 game. We have this game. I think this game is going to decide the American champion, and I still think the Group of 5 representative is going to come out of the American Conference. South Florida, Memphis. Man, Memphis coming off a brutal loss to UAB. I mean, what was that? They were 23.5 point favorites. UAB just fired Trent Dilfer, their coach. They weren't good before they had him. I don't think it's a UCLA situation where they're going to be good after him. And you just go out and lay an absolute goose egg. Brutal loss. South Carolina, man, after they beat Boise, because Boise State was my preseason pick to make the college football playoffs, and after South Florida beat them in that opening game, that first game of the season, my pick was South Florida, and I haven't jumped off South Florida since. I mean, they are, I think not by far, they're not by far the best Group of 5, but they are, in my opinion, the best Group of 5 team. I mean, their offense is just absolutely explosive. Byron Brown, I mean, he is just an absolute unit. He has been crushing it. I mean, that North Texas game, I watched that game in its entirety, and for them to go out and turn the ball over, what, like three times in the first quarter, and to still win 63-36. I mean, they just put it absolutely on North Texas. And North Texas is a good team. North Texas was undefeated up to that point. I mean, and just like look at 48 points against FAU, 63 against South Florida, or against North Texas, 54 against Charlotte, 63 against SC State. I think it's a FCS team. 34 against Boise. The only time they didn't score, over 20 points was against Florida, that's the game they still won, and against Miami, which is, a top team in the country. I think South Florida offense is just absolutely explosive. Memphis, man, to think that Memphis walked in and beat Arkansas and then to go out and lose to UAB is just absolutely wild. Like, UAB ran for 200 yards and they threw for 250 yards. I mean, if you let UAB do that, I mean, what's gonna happen with against South Florida? Like that, because that is a legit offense that can give you trouble. Dual threat quarterback. They got some great receivers. This is Memphis. I had respect for them. I had Memphis ranked over South Florida, and then I kind of lost that respect when they just go out and lose to UAB. So I mean, this one isn't too difficult for me. I think South Florida is going to win. Oh, I don't even know what the spread is on this game. Let me go look at it. Let me go find it real quick. Yeah, so the spread right now is sitting at South Florida -4.5. I think they're going to win. I think they're going to cover that. We're taking South Florida -4.5. Before we get out of here, we're just going to quickly go over, some of the other games going on across the country. Just give you my quick takes on who I like. UCLA, Indiana. Indiana's a 25.5-point favorite. Man, UCLA, they've just had an absolute renaissance, man. Like, fire their coach and they start winning. Nico just starts looking like a completely different guy. This is tough because 25.5 points is a lot. But I think I'm going to take Indiana and I'm going to take them to cover because this is one of those situations because, like, Michigan State, Kirk Cignetti's in his time there, he has just always just dominated teams that he should be beating. And, I mean, Michigan State, I think, I'm not even going to say they're slightly better because UCLA beat them. I think Kirk Cignetti's is going to put it on them. I think he's going to cover that 25.5-point spread. So I like Indiana on that. Georgia Tech and Syracuse, this could be a tricky spot for Georgia Tech. I do still think they're going to win. I think they're sitting at 17.5. I think Syracuse could make it competitive. But I do like Georgia Tech. I think they get that cover pretty late. But I do think they will cover. Let's see, what else? Alabama versus South Carolina. I didn't really talk about this game just because I just didn't really think there's a lot to talk about. I think Alabama's just playing in a different level right now. South Carolina, they're just reeling. I mean, it's just not looking good for them. I don't think this is going to be a spot. I know some people are kind of saying trap game. Alabama, all their losses last year came on the road, but I don't think this is going to be one of those spots, man. I just love the way Alabama's playing. Their offense is clicking, and this is South Carolina's team whose season's just kind of going down the drain. So I think Alabama wins, and I think they can take care of business and they cover. This BYU Iowa State game is tricky, man, because Iowa State's favored by 2.5. But it's because they're at home too, man. I think BYU's due, man. They are due. They are a good team, but I don't think they're a great team. I don't think they are a great team, but they're a good team. They're a team who they love running the ball. I think they're averaging 250 yards per game on the ground. But Iowa State, man, that is a tough team. I mean, that's a tough place to play. I'm leaning Iowa State slightly. That's -2.5. I'd probably just take the money line. I think it's going to be a close competitive game, but I do think Iowa State's going to win. Illinois and Washington, that's another tricky one. But I think Washington's going to win. Them being at home, I still haven't gotten that taste from that Indiana game out of my mouth, and the way they looked against Ohio State. I mean, I'm just kind of off at the Illinois train, so I do think Washington takes that one. Is there anything else? I mean, that's kind of it. Um, yeah, we'll end it on that note. So, with that being said, I appreciate you guys for listening. If you made it this far, not as high energy as we usually are. It's late, man, and it's late, and I'm cooked. It's been a day, but anyways, I appreciate you guys for sticking it out, listening. If you made it this far, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Enjoy this weekend of college football. We'll be back with a recap after this weekend. I probably am going to put out uh, an updated playoff projection. We did one in the preseason, and then we did one around week 4, week 5. So we're coming up on week 9. So next week will be week 10. So I'll probably put out an updated playoff. I think the official college football playoff rankings are coming out in 2 weeks, the first Tuesday of November. So we'll see, what the committee is. We'll see kind of how their criteria is going, because they did say they were going to update their criteria this year. And strength of schedule and strength of record were going to be some big components. So we're going to see how they rank them. We're going to see how different their rankings are from the AP poll. But it's good to know that the AP poll rankings are about to lose their meaning here in a couple weeks. So that's always a good thing. And yep, that's enough for yapping. So I appreciate you guys for listening. Thank you.